Welcome to the Thriving Mayor Show. Conversations with people making the biggest difference in the quality of living in our towns and cities, including former and current mayors and other special guests. Each interview features their wisdom, unique perspective, stories, and experiences shared in a casual conversation. Join us and comment on social media as we meet another leader in the life of our urban places. Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Hubicki, the host of the Thriving Mayor Show. It's October 27th, 2021, and it's episode 36 of the Thriving Mayor Show. And I'm super honored today and really excited to have as our guest, Dr. Josie McLean from, I believe, Adelaide, Australia. Good morning, Josie. How are you today?
I'm very good, thank you. And way in front of you, Michael. You're still on yesterday.
What's it like tomorrow?
The weather's fine.
Wonderful. I've had such a hard time getting our schedules aligned, and I found out that Adelaide, or your region, is one of the 2 or 3 places in the world that have a half-hour difference from most of the other regions of their countries, which is another one's Newfoundland and in Canada, and that kind of messed me up a little bit. But welcome to the show.
Thank you. We did it.
we have done it. Fantastic. I'll begin this episode by honoring the land and the Indigenous peoples who've lived here from the beginning. I'm grateful for the opportunity to live here, the Bay of Quinte, and thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. In particular, I honor the ancestors of the land, the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. This territory is covered by the 1783 Crawford Purchase. And Josie, would you like to share with us an honoring of your Indigenous landscapes and people?
I would love to, thank you. So I'm talking with you today from the land of the Paramanca people as part of the Adelaide Hills. And the Paramanca people have walked this country for a very long time. The stories of their cultures are in the trees and the land and the rivers that flow through this area. And I'd like to honour the elders past, present and emerging for their nurturing of this land and recognise their continuing spiritual connection to the land.
Wonderful. Yeah, it just gives me goosebumps when we share our thoughts like this. And in Canada right now, we're going through for quite a while, but we're really now all of us who can are trying to promote truth and reconciliation and learn as best that we can about our past, and which past Prime Minister, as an example, has said is one of the blackest moments in Canadian history. So we all are struggling with that and trying to learn and become agents of change.
I think Australia and Canada share that history of colonisation, I suppose.
Yes.
We've got very similar stories here. When I read some of the stories emerging from Canada about the children and how they were treated, we've got exactly the same stories here, entire generations removed from their families, which is quite devastating when you think about it, let alone living through it if you were actually touched by it. So
so
the
true.
trauma that's been sowed through society as a result of that is quite significant.
Yeah, so true. So Josie, you are now you're the 6th author on the show, but you're by far the most distant guest that we've had. And the previous record holder was Mayor Kasim Doumbia from Shippagan, New Brunswick, who traveled to Canada from Ivory Coast. But I believe you're about 16,800 kilometers and 14 and a half or 15 and a half time zones away.
I think that would be about right. So if you drilled a hole straight through the middle of the earth, you might come out about here.
So thank you very much. And I'm glad to hear that tomorrow is pleasant.
Yeah, we had a tornado, but you should skip that.
Yeah, we're getting a little rain here, but it's lovely here this time of year. Dr. Josie McLean, his PhD PCC, was one of the early pioneers of professional coaching in Australia after an early career as a corporate strategic planner. Josie was president of ICF Australasia in 2003 and accepted the ICF President's Award in 2009. Josie's doctoral research into organizational sustainability or emergent change and complexity was completed in 2017. She has co-founded 2 not-for-profit organizations in addition to the Climate Coaching Alliance. Dr. McLean's most recent book is Big Little Shifts, A Practitioner's Guide to Complexity for Organizational Change and Adaptation. She is a constant learner, activist, and provocateur at heart. She's also the principal consultant at the partnership and remains very committed to helping organizations of all types transform their identities, their purpose, vision, and values to be aligned with a truly sustainable or regenerative world. Without this transformation, she does not believe that we will address issues such as climate change successfully. And I'm super excited today, Josie, to have you on the show and learn more about your research and perspectives. And also I was really disappointed in one of the APEC and CCA sessions that you were one of the featured speakers in. And by the time you were able to speak, there was only 10 minutes left and you weren't able to share your thoughts. So I'm really looking forward today to hearing more about that, which we'll get to a little bit later. But before we do, please tell us a little bit about Josie and where you grew up and kind of any defining moments from your recollection that led to where you are today, to such a powerful and influential leader on the global scene.
Oh, thank you, Michael. I'm getting a bit older, so how long do you want this story to be?
Well, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Whyalla, which is on the coast, but in a semi-arid area of South Australia.
Okay.
And so a family of 3 children, mum and dad, very ordinary. We lived outside a lot. I suppose one of the things that I was thinking about this morning, one of the things that I remember from my childhood in particular, living near the coast, is just going out fishing with Dad and being able to say, oh, we'll go over there and get some crabs, and then we'll go over there and we'll get some whiting, and then we'll go over there and get something else. And we'd go home. It was like going to a supermarket. And I was thinking, you just can't do that today.
Wow.
And when we talk about climate change and issues like that, I think that's one of the things that we can reflect upon. It's easy with the incremental changes to miss it. But when we think back to when we were children and what we did and what we can do now and what the children now can do and what the children in the future might have the opportunity to do, for me, that's what my work is about. It's those opportunities that we have, and may have or not have into the future.
Wow.
How do we hold those opportunities? So I had a wonderful childhood, a lot of outdoor sport. I left home when I was 17 and went to university down in the Big Smoke. And
is that Melbourne?
Sorry?
Is that Melbourne?
No, that was Adelaide.
Okay.
So Adelaide's a small Big Smoke. I'm living in Adelaide, on the outskirts of Adelaide again now, but we moved away for a period of time and came back again to raise the children here. It's such a beautiful city. It's one of the world's most livable cities, Adelaide. I think it's number 3 on the list of something. And we live amongst a gorgeous variety of wineries, great food, lovely country, a city small enough to get around in. It used to be half an hour, but now it's about an hour. You can get from one side to the other in an hour. So it's a Mediterranean climate. It's very, very pleasant at the moment.
Wonderful. And hearkening back to your childhood and the fishing, so you could go to 3 different little habitats, micro habitats along the coast, and catch different seafood or fish. Yeah, and your dad would know by the rocks
Yeah.
and the corals and
He
the.
knew exactly where each patch would be at different seasons, different times of the day, different weather conditions. And you just can't do that now.
No, no. It brings to mind intergenerational justice.
Yeah.
Now, and that when we were kids, we didn't think about we would have to be, what would be there for us, and then what would be there for our kids, and then for their kids. But yeah, there are such significant changes that we really have to pay attention and start to correct this path that we've been going down.
I think so, and during my lifetime, the world's population has more than doubled. So, we've all got to eat, don't we?
Yeah, yeah.
And we're encroaching upon all of those once pristine ecological areas that actually sustained life on the planet in order for us to eat. And I can understand that. We're encroaching upon those ecological systems as well to just satisfy our demand for consuming endless supplies of products we don't really need to.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think we need to get clear on what we need and what we don't need.
Yeah, move away from that culture of consumption.
Yeah, and that's going to be really hard because we're so addicted to it, aren't we? And,
Yeah.
and I am I'm not just pointing at the figures at everyone else and saying, oh, I'm the perfect model of virtue. It's so hard for us all because we are operating in a system that encourages us to behave in that way. Yeah. And that's really my interest in how do these systems actually encourage us to behave in certain ways, and how do we alter the assumptions that exist within those systems so that we might behave differently.
Right. And and I want to get back to the CCA and your book, but just to explore the concept of systems a little bit more, and to look at kind of more of an ecological perspective, and rather than the technical system, to look at it as an ecological system where it's all the parts are interdependent and living and interconnected. Whereas in a technical system, it's X plus Y plus Z, and so that's really interesting. And I think that was part of the research for your book and an organizational systemic thinking where you've been moving towards it. So it's so interesting. Yeah. Well, there was a quote that we had in one of your podcasts, and rather than call yourself a business coach, you called yourself do you remember the quote that you used? It was a term.
It was a term that I'd heard another person here in Australia use, an organisational ecologist, I think.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like it. It's very cool. And it does reflect this shift in thinking about different types of systems and recognising that there are different types of systems. There's the type of system that's like our phones sort of thing, mechanical and predictable. And when we change one of those types of systems, we do it to the system.
Yes.
But we are an example of a living system, the ecological system that you're talking about. So if people are going, oh, what are you talking about? Just think of your own body, because that is an example of an ecological system. It's a living system with the same properties as an ecological system. You've got what we call nested systems within your body. And I don't know how far you want to go into this, but
this is fascinating. Yeah.
Well, I'll give you the whole spiel then. So within your body, you've got tiny little cells, for example, a cell within your heart, perhaps, and that's a whole and complete cell. And it's a part of your heart, which is whole and complete, which is a part of your circulatory system, which is one system, and it's whole and complete and a part of the other systems that make up your physical body. And that's whole and complete. And also we add to it the complexity of your consciousness now.
Yeah.
And that reflects a history and a legacy that goes back into your ancestors and all of the experiences you've had since. So when we take all of these dimensions of you, you're whole and complete like that, and you're a part of your family, you're a part of your community, you're a part of the landscape that you're actually existing on. And in fact, if we go back and think about the last 4.7 billion years of history on this earth, people have emerged from this earth. We are this earth. We are nature.
Yeah.
And so we're not separate from it. We're just an expression of it. We're an experiment of planet Earth. And, you know, we need to take care of it. We have a consciousness that enables us to take care of it. And I was so thrilled to see the Pope over the last couple of weeks and a number of other faith leaders come out and say, you know, God really wants us to care for this planet, that it's our duty to care for it. Yeah. I think it's just, I think that is so true. We need to stop thinking we're separate from it and that we can take as much as we want, because we've reached the boundaries. We can't take as much as we want. There are limits, and we need to learn to live within them. And I think we can have fabulous lives within them too, by the way.
Yeah. I think we're right at the beginning of a renaissance. That there was an article I read today that said the Renaissance was 300 years, and I think it might have been Hal Gregerson today, and he said this next Renaissance will be happening in 8 to 10 years. It's exponential, the changes that we're going to see and that we have to see. Yeah,
I'd agree with that, and I'm really excited because I've been reading a bit about the Renaissance and the European Enlightenment recently, and it's such a thrilling, exciting time.
Yeah.
Different ideas, new art, new stories being told, different ways of connecting with each other, and I think the pandemic maybe has been the trigger for us, where people have stopped for a little while and actually reflected upon, what do I really want? What's really important? And we've come to realize that connection with each other is really important. And perhaps we had forgotten for a little while.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think another way of looking at it is energy, is the balance of energy, and the energy that we have in our the energetic system. That we are, and how we relate to each other. And we can go into a room and our energy can light that room up, or it can dim that room down, right? And it's everything is just so interconnected and interwoven. It's really exciting.
It is, and it's all moving together all the time, unlike the static mechanistic systems, which are kind of still and fixed. That's because they're dead. They don't live. We are living. We have this emergent quality that's called life, and until we don't. But we are living. We are able to replicate ourselves, and it's a very distinguishing feature between a mechanistic system and a living system. And these big challenges that we're facing, like the climate crisis and the ecological crisis, and they're really the same challenge, I think.
Yeah.
Are emergent qualities of the system that no one sat down and went,
What do you mean by
change,
Josie, what do you mean by emergent qualities?
Well, like when you put your body together with those cells, you have the breath of life in you. That's an emergent quality. Like a bike doesn't have life, does it? It exists, but it can't replicate itself. Right. It can't repair itself. Those sorts of things. Yeah, that's what a living system does.
Oh,
so,
right.
So that's what I mean. Climate change, if you like, is an emergent quality of a system that is interdependent, and a number of different things interrelating with each other over a period, different time periods, different feedback loops, and out pops this challenge that we call climate change. but it's actually not just a thing.
Yeah.
It's actually an emergent set of circumstances that have come from an entire way of living and seeing the world. Like, it's an interrelationship between the way we educate people, what we believe, the technologies that we use, the way we see success, the way we run business, the way we do politics. It's all interrelated. And I think you only have to look at the way coronavirus has changed everything, really.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I don't know about you in the US. I imagine it was the same. Almost overnight, the transport systems changed, supply systems changed. We started educating our kids from home. We started working from home. You know, everything changed.
Yeah.
Except perhaps the weather pattern outside. I can remember being locked down and looking outside and go, oh, it looks so tranquil out there.
Yeah.
And the rest of my world feels so disturbed.
Yeah.
That's the whole systems change that we went
Wonderful. So Josie, let's explain to us a little bit how you went from university, then into a corporate career, and then the coaching, and now into the partnership. This is an amazing journey, and like with some really interesting transitions along the way.
Some of them chosen and some of them forced. So life does that to us, doesn't it? I started studying economics because I'd done sciences at school, and I hadn't done the arts, and I hadn't done much around writing. So I chose economics. It was in the middle. I was sick of doing sciences. And so that was my decision-making process.
Yeah.
It was pretty poor. And then within economics was this discipline of accounting. So I'd done accounting, and I thought, I'll go out and be an accountant at the end. But in the final year exam, I had to drink a whole bottle of port to get to sleep the night before. I'm just not a detail-minded person. My trial balances never balanced, you know. So I thought perhaps strict accounting isn't for me. And I moved into corporate life, and my first job was with Chrysler Australia, actually. And I was the first female in their long-range planning division. At a time when we used to do everything on really huge spreadsheets with 26 columns on them and a pencil and a rubber. So an intriguing experience, making 15-year plans at a time when Mitsubishi was just about to take over, and I used to work from about 8 in the morning through till about midnight at night.
Wow.
And I did that for 1.5 years before I moved to the finance industry. And I became a strategic planner within there. And I used to write beautiful plans that never happened.
Yeah.
And it really struck me that I had a couple of experiences that really struck me that process was really important. The way you go about developing these plans is really important. You have to engage people. And I became intrigued about the intersection between strategy, people, and change. And really that thread has been something, when I look back, that thread has been there in my work for 40 years.
Cool.
And it's expressed itself in different ways. So I was working in the finance industry. I actually ran a finance company branch for a period of time in Melbourne. And by the time I was 30, I was sort of thinking, I don't know why I'm doing this. Like, I'm just shuffling bits of paper for rich people. And meaning started to come to the fore of my mind.
Wow. And
at the same time, I was never going to have children, but I was pregnant. So life changes. Life finds a way, you know. And I subsequently had 3 children. I loved them so much, and stayed.
Beautiful.
Had the choice and the privilege, really, that many people don't have today, because life was different then. Yeah. You could actually live on one wage, and I actually chose to stay home and raise my children for a period of time. I look back now and think what a privilege that was. Mm-hmm. And but when I wanted to get back into work, I couldn't. We were back here in Adelaide then, and I went to see a recruiter, and he told me I was too old and too female to be employed.
Wow.
Literally. And I thought, oh, that's a bit disappointing. So coaching was just emerging, and And I'm still interested in this intersection of strategy, change,
Yes.
and people, right? And coaching was interesting to me. And at the time, I had a part-time job for a small organisation that was working with startup organisations, and I was writing business plans. And I started using more of a coaching approach. So the distinction being asking rather than telling, instead of using my expertise. I was asking clients, well, what do you think you should do? And I'd write it into the plan. Yeah. And then before it was written and the ink was dry, they were doing it. And I thought, well, this is cool, whereas none of my plans have ever been actioned before. And coaching was just emerging. One of the consultants I was working with said, you ought to have a look at this, Josie. There's really interesting stuff happening in the States. Have a look at the web. And the web was just emerging at that time too.
Yeah, yeah.
And I started noticing these little coaching sites. Some of them had bluebirds of happiness and stuff like that on them. And that wasn't so much me, but there were other sort of executive corporate looking sites. And I thought, oh, that's cool. I had an argument with the woman that I was working for in that smaller organisation writing business plans, and I decided to go and start my own business. I was helping other people start theirs, and I thought, well, if they can do it, surely I can do it. And that's what I did, and suddenly I was at the forefront of coaching in Australia.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I guess I've always been curious, like people say I'm brave, but I'm just not very good at assessing risks, actually. So, you know, sometimes
I love that
you barge in where angels would fear to tread.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, when you were mentioning about the intersection of those three thoughts, and what came to my mind is action. It's like those three things should create action. They should create something happening, a tangible outcome. And for me, that was similar, but I chose a design profession, landscape architecture. But there's so much of our work was planning. Let's master plan this. Let's do a strategic plan for this. Let's do a vision for that. And it's the same thing. So you'd spend a year and however many dollars and have a lot of stakeholder consultation to come up with a plan, and it just didn't go anywhere. And my favorite projects could have been the smallest little park or a corner of a lot somewhere. But we talked to people, what would make this most valuable to you and your kids or the community? And they tell us, and then we could design that and see it built, and then immediately see people enjoying it. Which was super, super gratifying, very, very rewarding. So then the coaching, you started your firm, which is really exciting. And is that still the partnership, or was that a different firm?
It was called Think Coaching back then, which no one understood. Meant a lot to me. But I changed the name over a period of time. I think I might prefer Think Coaching still, but
it's probably taken now.
Yes, probably.
Yeah.
But the coaching was intriguing because it put me in contact with other coaches globally, and so I met Sir John Whitmore, and he was a friend. And in fact, I had an epiphany talking to him in 2003 that then influenced. That was the next major point in my life. So we were talking, and he was sharing about how he was doing some work in the Middle East, and he just casually said there'll be wars over water in the future, you know.
Yeah. And
suddenly I had this moment where, like, there were still people around me. We were just sitting at a little coffee table having a cup of coffee or a tea or something. But the whole world seemed to cave in on me in that moment. And I must have been kind of absent for a few seconds, but it felt like a long time. And when I re-emerged, everything had just sort of kind of clicked into place, and I had this epiphany. Humans, if we keep living like this, we're an unsustainable species. You know, we can't keep doing this. And from that moment, my clientele in my coaching, I walked away from the big blue chip clients because I could see that they were, as a part of this system, exploiting people and planet. But I didn't know how to engage with it and help them change. And I thought, I'm not going back until I've got some different answers. So I left. I started working with local councils more because I thought they were a part of the system that are at the intersection of several big systems. That, you know, they work in community development here in Australia, they work in environmental sustainability, and they work in economic development. So these three big systems, you can hear the triple bottom line almost in those systems, can't you? And so I thought I'll put my attention to local councils. So I started working a lot with people who work within local councils, with executive teams in local councils, and on the odd occasion with councillors themselves as they try to generate better patterns of work, working together, so that they could create better outcomes for their people too. So, and that led to my PhD as well over a period of time, because I read and read, and people had an idea of what a sustainable organisation, more than sustainable, but sustaining, nurturing the environment that it's in, right?
Yeah.
So we call that regenerative now. But people had an idea of what it would look like, but no idea of how to practically do it. So here I am at the intersection of strategy, people and process again. How do we actually create this change? And what I started to notice was, you know, when we think of those simple systems, we make changes to them. But that's not the way change emerges with living systems. Change actually emerges from it's a quality of life. When something makes sense to us from the outside, we get some information, we process it, we make sense of it with reference to our identity, and we change if it makes sense. And we don't if it doesn't make sense. So you have to engage to help people make sense. So, you know, that's one of the foundation pieces, I suppose, out of what I've been learning over the last 15 years or so. And it fits so well with coaching, doesn't it? That's why coaching works.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it's so interesting when you talked about you switch from consulting, where you do an analysis, you figure out, you know, what the problem is, and here's the best solution based on all the different criteria.
Yeah.
And they don't necessarily have to take any ownership of that, because we're telling them that's the answer. Whereas in coaching, as you said, you start asking the questions, and then there's a sense of ownership. There's a sense of participation. There's this the system becomes intertwined, and it's just so much more powerful.
Yeah. And I think what we forget sometimes, we think of the system as being out there.
Yeah.
But it's actually in us. That's where it lives. It's in our heads. It's in our assumptions. It's in our ways of doing things. So if we want to change the system, we actually need to change ourselves.
I coach a men's volleyball team at a local college, and athletic coaching is so different than executive or leadership or life coaching. But then what I've tried to do is take some of the concepts of coaching into coaching. Which involves a lot more questions, asking. Yeah. So do they understand why they're doing what they're doing? Do they have a purpose? Do they have a goal? You can't have a goal of winning, because it's out of your control.
Yeah.
But it's so powerful. Coaching is amazing, and as a leadership style, I think it's probably one of the best styles that a leader can employ to be successful.
I think that's true in most occasions. In the case of an emergency, we do we do need that telling style for a period of time, you know, that direction and order and protection that comes with authority roles. Yeah. But if we want to get to the root of most of the challenges that we have today, at some point we have to go back and engage. We have to help people do their own adaptive work. Yeah. And if we don't, we're never going to resolve some of these larger issues, I don't believe.
Absolutely. So is that Josie, a good point in our conversation to introduce the Climate Coaching Alliance?
Sure. Yes.
So before we dive into it, I'd just like to read the vision that's on the website, because it's so beautiful. It's really amazing. So I'll read this. We participate in a positive shift in human awareness to effect wider systemic changes in the world towards a truly regenerative future, to give life to the forest of life. We influence the global professional coaching community to bring in the deep and difficult questions of climate and ecological emergency into coaching conversations. If we are magnificently successful, our current role will no longer be needed by 2025. What
I know.
an amazing vision. And let's hope that being a member now of CCA, I think that's incredible. And if we could be at that point by 2025, then that we've made a earth-shattering, momentous change. Wonderful.
I know. So CCA came into existence through its real roots go back to Linda Aspey, Zoe Cohen, and Alison Wyborough, who wrote a letter to the coaching industry asking, where were the coaches when the global temperature soared to 3 degrees higher than now. Alison reached out to Eve to see if they could do something together, because Eve had set up the global supervising network of coaches, and so she had some experience in bringing people together.
Right.
And then Eve and I have been friends. So Alison and Eve are in London, but Eve and I have been friends for several years. We met through another coach here in Australia, Professor Anthony Grant, while he was still alive. Tony and I used to throw hand grenades at each other when coaching was being born. So we had a really great relationship. I mean that sincerely, like we did have a great relationship. And Tony put Eve in contact with me at one point when she was coming out to Australia, and we became friends. So the three of us got together and said, well, how could we generate a shift within the coaching industry, not just create some new little thing with a different idea, but actually change the system. So influence the global professional coaching bodies, influence the coaching training bodies, influence the co-chairs. And my ambition, this is just mine, I'm not speaking for others here. My ambition was to forever change the ethics of coaching. It would become unethical not to raise these questions.
Yeah.
And we haven't quite achieved that. And it's not for us to say that we achieve it on our own, because we don't. It's working together. How can we share ideas? How can we listen to each other? How can we influence each other in order to change? Because the world around us is changing. It's that information coming in, making sense of it. How do we need to respond? And the world is changing around us. What we used to take for granted was a consistent, stabilised climate and a consistent, stabilised ecological environment that we thought we could just take as much as we wanted from.
Yeah.
And the feedback we're getting from those systems is that that's not so, and we need to respond to it. We can't go on doing what we're doing. And so, these things are in our conversations all the time. It's just that we've become unaware of them. We're used to them being a constant, so we didn't take them into our consideration. But they're no longer a constant, and we need to take them into our consideration. And we need to, for everyone, ask the questions around, what are the impacts of the decisions you're making? Think out a little bit further than 3 quarters. Think out longer than that. Think out into 50 years, 100 years, because that's the impact that these feedback loops have over time. So it's a different way of thinking, I think.
Absolutely. And I was first introduced to the CCA through a Peter Hawkins session at WBEX, and I didn't know about it, and I very, very interested and want to participate. So I was really intrigued. As soon as Peter's session was finished, I got on the web and went to the site and became a member. And then right away there was a 3-part session that you were in called "You Coaching and the World is One." And your session, it was about facts that we can share with clients or other people about the climate and ecological emergency, and then ways to engage people and not the
Yeah.
gloom or the mass media or social media kind of propaganda, but meaningful questions to ask and discourse. And I was just wondering if you could share with us a couple of your strategies or kind of concepts that I could share with mayors and other councils, and you've worked with municipalities and councils, and so really I'd be indebted to you if you could share some of your wisdom in that area.
Well, I think first of all, we all know this, that around the world the topic of climate change has become a political football.
Yeah.
It polarizes us. You either believe or you don't believe. And scientists aren't like that. They don't believe science. Scientists are actually really skeptical, and I work with a lot of them, and they're very skeptical about me. But the gorgeous thing about skepticism is that it's actually the trademark of an open mind.
Oh.
So if you're skeptical, you're actually, I have to understand more about this. I need to make sense of this, and I need to interrogate the data. It's not a belief. It's actually understanding it and understanding if there's other ways of seeing it.
Yeah.
And so, I like working with skeptics because they are open. Cynicism is different.
Yeah.
Belief-based, because it suits my current worldview, is different.
Yeah.
So how do we open these conversations when people may have different narratives running in the background? And so initially, I'm a bit of an activist. So initially, years ago, I would come in with, this is what I believe.
Yeah.
And when you come in with, this is what I believe, you create an equal and opposite force, usually, if not a greater force. So that's not actually a very useful tactic for anyone. It doesn't get the activist very far. It raises a bit of awareness, and I'm certainly not saying that activists aren't a necessary part of the process. But if I'm actually trying to engage people, we need to do more listening. And one of the simplest ways of engaging people, I think, is around stories like the fishing story that I shared with you some time ago this morning. What have you noticed change over your lifetime? When you look in the world around you, what's
beautiful? Yeah.
And it comes from simple observation. That program, that evening that you referred to with APAC, I was on that session with Neil Scotton as well.
Yeah.
And one of his favourite questions is just being clear about what he believes in and saying, what do you care about? And it is essentially, what we're talking about is essentially what life we really want to live. Because if we don't change what we're doing, the world is going to change it for us.
Mm.
I woke up this morning and there's been a tornado through the northern part of New South Wales and the southern part of Queensland this morning, just overnight. Another extreme event on top of, we had wildfires here a couple of summers ago. Last summer I had a fire outside my house tearing through the hills. These events are becoming more and more frequent. The world will make us change.
Mm-hmm.
But by the time we change like that, it will probably be too late because of the feedback loops. So how do we make sense of this and how do we engage people? And I think it really is just around thinking through the implications of our decisions over a period of time, extending the timeline. So any question that helps people extend the timeline.
Right.
So if they're making a decision and you say, what time frame are you taking into account with that decision? And they might say, the next year or so. So what do you think the implications might be in 15, 20, 30 years? Have you thought that through? And then getting people to think more broadly about who might be impacted by their decisions as well. So I think, this is one of the things councils often do quite well in consulting people, but do they engage people more broadly?
Right.
So I think, in councils, one of the things that they're getting good at is actually engaging people. Certainly some of them here in South Australia are. where their community development people go out and run workshops that actually ask questions and engage people in thinking. And that's where the change comes from, rather than a plan being directed. So I was involved in a pilot here with the City of Marion, and they were engaging some of their residents around a greener suburbia, because when it's green, it will lower the temperatures in summer. So it's about well-being and health, really, but planting more trees in private spaces, because the council can only dictate what happens within the public spaces. So they were trying to engage residents around actually planting more trees and caring for a greener environment within the private spaces. So that was a genuine process of engagement to generate change, rather than a consultation. What do you think? Now we'll go away and make a decision and tell you what we're going to do, because the council can't do it all. So I think the types of questions we ask are really important, and they don't have to be, what are you doing about climate change?
Yeah.
They can be a lot more subtle and a lot more influential on that.
And personal.
Yes.
Yeah.
I heard where it comes from.
Yeah, I heard. It's not a quote, but it was sort of a mantra that someone said: "Questions bring us together, answers divide us."
Yes. Yeah, I'd absolutely agree with that.
Yeah.
So if we can present a problem or a challenge to a group of people rather than a solution, you get a whole heap less argument. Yeah.
Yeah. Some of the other points that you had given me before was to serve the health of the whole. So as a council, the mayor council is quite often there's an election issue, and there's a platform that's developed, but we really want to encourage our elected officials to be looking at the health of the whole. And it's, again, how do we break that down into the systems and help people understand, what that means right now, and then an almost ecological time frame as well, or intergenerational time frame.
Yeah, so that we come to this time frame again, and the thing that I often see in local municipalities, your system may be different, but ours is such that the local municipalities, being a councillor there is often an incubator for going on and being a councillor in another level, bigger level of government.
Yeah.
So people are trying out their little political suits, and I find it disappointing, quite frankly, because here's an opportunity for a group of people to get together and say, what's best for our community? And instead they're trying out these political tactics so that they can play with the big boys later, or the big girls. In Australia, it's mostly big boys, that's...
Yeah.
Go back to Julia Gillard's misogyny speech, if you like. But, they're trying out and they're trying to learn the political manoeuvres, and I do find it disappointing, because I think fundamentally, if there's one thing I've learned from my research of 15 years all over the world, asking people this simple question: how do you really want to live your life?
Yeah.
How do you really want to experience it? Fundamentally, I get the same answer back time and time and time again, and I really must write this up into a paper. But I know that fundamentally we all want the same thing. What we're arguing about is how to get there.
Yeah. Yeah.
We all want love and connection in our families and friends. We want healthy lives. We want a healthy place to work. We want work that gives us a little bit of autonomy and a bit of meaning, mostly in our work. We don't want to be demoralised by our work. We want to feel valued. And we want to be able to enjoy nature, go for a picnic or a walk when we want to. These are really basic things. And whenever I ask people these questions, they don't talk to me about Ferraris. They don't talk to me about how many condos they have. money hardly ever comes into the conversation. It's so fascinating. Now, I've asked this question in India, Taiwan, Korea, Australia, very different cultures, and I get similar responses. So I think the opportunity in local councils, what I'd plead with people is think about what you really want for your communities, and then recognise that you're actually wanting the same thing, and what you're arguing about, what you're debating, are the different ways of getting there. Yeah. And I think the opportunity with these complex challenges, and life seems to be becoming more and more complex, is for councils to take a more experimental view and to say, okay, so we've got a challenge here. What if we think this might work? Let's try this out in practice on a pilot and see if it does work. And then we can eliminate the political arguments along the way. And so, you know, when I speak with councillors, I ask them to reflect upon why they are there in the first place. Because are they really there just to learn the art of politics, or are they there to serve their communities? And if it's the latter, let's get on with it.
Yeah, that's so true. There was one of my most recent guests, Jeff Lehman, who's the mayor of Barrie, Ontario, he went to school at the London School of Economics. Brilliant man. I think he's third or fourth term now as the mayor. He loves his city. The city loves him. Yeah. And he's so entrepreneurial. And he created a special division at the city, which is an incubator. And it's doing exactly what you just suggested. Let's test it. We'll iterate, test, fail, iterate, test, fail. And the younger entrepreneurial people are flocking to that community because of his leadership. Is so visionary. And you talked about we're sharing a vision, which is pretty simple, but how do you get there? And it's that bigger vision. And he's a really amazing example of a mayor who's embracing, what you're explaining and suggesting. Really amazing work. Yeah.
I'm going to have to look him up after this.
Yeah, I think he's episode 32. Yeah.
Okay, I'll have a look.
And episode 33 was the British Columbia Council for International Cooperation, and it was three younger women who had just all recently graduated from university, and they'd authored the Climate Justice Toolkit for Municipalities, a fantastic document on their website, and it's downloadable. And we had such a wonderful conversation, their journey, how they got to where they are, but it was all about climate justice. And we talked about Aboriginals and the sections that people in our society who are marginalized, and that they're going to be the most heavily impacted by climate and ecological emergencies and things. So, Josie, this has been fascinating. I don't want to leave before we talk about Big Little Shifts, your book. And I'm just thinking, as I'm hearing you speak, that some of these are little shifts, but some of them are big shifts. And just want to hear a little bit about your book and how that came about and how we could use that.
Well, it's a how-to book. So it's how to lead change in complex circumstances. And increasingly, that's almost everywhere now.
Yeah.
So the underlying premise is something that we were talking about earlier, that change is something that we see as something we do to the machine.
Yeah.
And we have learned that. We've been deeply inculcated. It's deeply socialized and mostly unconscious. So we create plans, predetermined plans for change, and we roll them out. And they're not very successful organisationally. The research from organisations shows that about 70 to 90% unsuccessful at delivering the intended outcomes. So I became intrigued in that statistic because I wanted to create a sustainable world. And if you can't even change an organisation successfully, how are we going to change the world? So I became very interested in how change occurs. So in a sense, just appreciating that change is not something we do to, but a change is something that emerges from, is a little shift. It's just a shift in thinking.
Yeah.
But it has huge implications for the way that we might work with people, for the way that we might understand leadership, because in these complex systems, they are inherently uncertain. We can't actually predict what's going to happen when we do something. And so what does that mean for this thing that we call leadership? If we can't know the answers when we have mostly thought about leadership in the past as being someone who's clear, decisive, action-orientated and knowing the answers, that's the picture most people have of someone who's a leader, not someone that turns up and says, oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
But actually that's the leadership role now, in certain circumstances, to say, we don't know and we can't know.
Yeah.
So let's experiment and learn our way forward to it.
Learn our way forward. Wow.
Yeah. And I think
Love
that's what we need to do with these, these big challenges. Not only climate change, although when I think climate change, I'm thinking of all of the things that you've mentioned this morning as well, like racial inequity, like social justice. All of those things are a part of the climate change challenge, because climate change is actually not a thing. It's an emergent property that it's got lots of different symptoms and it comes from lots of different causes. So we need experiments. I'm going to use the word solutions very carefully, because they're not solutions in the way we have thought of something that's permanently going to fix it. They're steps forward. They are making progress on these issues, and we need steps forward that are as complex as the challenges we're trying to resolve. If we don't meet the complexity with the complexity, we're never going to make a difference. So having lots of people engaged, lots of different perspectives, how to bring them together, how to pose a question that will engage them across all of the different factions, how to have new answers, new ways forward emerge from those conversations. That's what this book's about. And I think it stems basically from just a little shift in how we view change and how it happens.
Most of it's right here.
And most of it's up here.
Yeah.
Some of it is definitely in the systems that we, the structures that we exist in, but they stem from here too.
Yeah, absolutely. When will the next global conversation be at CCA?
That's under discussion at the moment.
Okay, I haven't been able to participate one. I've watched some of the recordings.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe just explain what that is.
That's stunning. So this was Eve Terminer's great idea. She said, "Why don't we run a global conversation?" And Alice and I looked at each other and went, "Oh yeah, okay." That was. We didn't realise that it was a near-death experience to organise. So the global conversation, I think we might have been the first to run it, and I've seen other organisations running similar events recently. But the idea was that we would take 24 time zones around the globe, that we'd have the same conversation hosted by different people in each one of those 24 time zones. And that was the first conversation. That we ran in March 2020. We had another one in September, I think. I can't even remember the dates.
Yeah, there were two in 2020 and one in 2021.
Yeah. So we're just looking and asking ourselves whether we'll run another one in March. But the second one was very different in character. So the first one was a conversation that we seeded the same over 24 conversations. The second one was an opportunity for everyone to contribute to the conversation. And all of our membership actually brought workshops and conversations and populated almost a festival all on their own. It was amazing. Over 100 events turned up. We thought we might get 20. Yeah. And it was an amazing, highly engaging, really generous, because everything we do is for free and open to everyone. So if anyone's listening, you're always welcome to join us. We get lots of sustainability practitioners, and we'd love people in local councils to be a part of it too. It would be brilliant. So probably March next year. It's a very long answer.
Yeah, super cool. What's the website? Climate Coaching
climatecoachingalliance.org.
.org.
Yeah.
Yeah, I strongly urge and recommend everyone to go and visit and join. Well, coaches, but I like it's just such an amazing resource. And then there's the seed bank, which is super exciting too, for people with ideas to seed those, and they have people all over the world to contribute and participate in the germination and the flourishing.
So the idea is just to share what we're learning. Yeah.
Oh, it's so wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Josie. Any last words you'd like to share with us before we let you get back to your morning?
Oh, thank you very much, Michael. It's been a delight speaking with you. I think the final link I'd like to make is to the title, to your hashtag, Thriving Mayor. What we've been talking about is actually how to thrive. Mm-hmm. Rather than just survive. Survival is important. We need to be doing that. But how can we thrive? Yeah. I love that. And I think that's what we've been talking about without using the word. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day, Josie. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Please leave any social media comments, questions that you'd like. We'll do our best to come back in and answer them, respond to them, and come back next week for another amazing guest on the show. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye, Josie.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining the Thriving Mayor Show. Make sure to like and share and tell your friends and colleagues. Mayors are awesome and are the change agents to enhance the quality of living for over 80% of us. Remember what Coach Wooden said, you cannot live a perfect day without doing something for someone who can never repay you. Much love and peace. Until next time.